To Inside Whitehall with me, James Starkey.
And me, Jonathan Gullis.
Well, I fear this week we're not going to struggle for things to talk about. Not that either of us ever do, is probably what's been pointed out to us by others. But as we are, 4 hours, we're speaking 4 hours after the Prime Minister Keir Starmer has resigned, something that was probably not expected quite this soon at the end of last week, but was pretty heavily briefed over the weekend. I was told though the lobby were not confused, but struggled to get any information really out of anyone very close to Starmer yesterday. So there was a lot of uncertainty as people woke up this morning. But sure enough, a sight that the public are perhaps too used to, around was it 9:30 this morning, a lectern popped up outside of number 10. Although
Hot Lecton guy
we
made a
had
return.
we had return of hot lectern guy, although at least for Keir Starmer, he didn't have to do it in the rain. He had some nice sunshine in this heat wave that we are enduring in the UK. But so we're going to have a new prime minister soon. What do we know so far? So we know Keir Starmer has resigned. He said it in his tweet, but we know that the NEC, which is the ruling body of the Labour Party, they decide the rules of a leadership contest. They have briefed the lobby in the last hour that, and I'll read this out to get it accurate, Jonathan, if I can. Their briefing in the last hour is for background use. The 9th of July enables PLP nomination stage to be completed by the 16th of July, the last day before recess, including a PLP hustings in person. So that means if there is a challenger to Andy Burnham, which as we speak doesn't look likely, Streeting has ruled himself out. But if there is a challenger, we'll have a hustings, which is when the candidates debate before the summit. In case of a contest, it means a new leader is in place by the start of the new parliamentary term on the 1st of September. This gives candidates time to prepare for a contest government. This is perhaps the crucial bit, given there are so far no other contenders apart from Andy Burnham. If no contest, the person is in place by the 17th or 18th of July. So it's quite likely, as we pick on the 22nd, that Andy Burnham has less than a month to prepare for government. What we also know is that Andy Burnham's people, his staff, are heavily briefing to the lobby that they would like to not come in place until September, 3 months away, to give them time to prepare for government. And the last thing I'll add is that people around Keir Starmer are politely, or perhaps not politely, saying that if Andy Burnham wanted to launch a coup, which he has done, perhaps he should have been a bit more ready for government before he did so. So that's a quick wrap up of where we are. Now, I'm going to kick it over to you, Jonathan. But the question I'm going to ask you is, what do you think the next 6 months of British politics look like? How is this going to play out?
Oh, look, my view is, and I'm sure you share it too, I suspect 18th of July we'll see Keir Starmer going to the King to formally resign as Prime Minister and Andy Burnham following in behind to formally accept the position of Prime Minister. We'll get a lovely warm speech and then quite rapidly Andy Burnham's going to have to appoint a cabinet. Now, I've heard so many different names now pointed. A Chancellor, Ed Miliband, who then gets briefed again. Shabana Mahmood, who apparently allegedly wants to stay at the Home Office. Where Streeting, it was his price for getting in behind Burnham and having no contest. There was also, I think, Pat McFadden's been mooted, and maybe even John Healey. But obviously, for John Healey, I suspect that would obviously come with the idea of defence spending. Either way, we know also that he's got economic advisors as well, Andy Burnham. Some of them are being described in certain parts of the media as being quite hard left. Some of them were saying that the fiscal rules could be more flexible when it comes to borrowing and investing into the public sector. Andy Burnham very quickly has come out and said, no, the fiscal rules as they're written by Rachel Reeves will stay exactly in place. So it's good to see Starmerism on steroids continues, just with a black shirt rather than a full suit. And so I think the idea is that we'll have then summer recess where we'll be told relentlessly the ministers are getting into their departments and they're getting across the brief, and Andy Burnham's building his team and he's going to set out his vision. And then in September, we'll be told, well, conference season's coming up, so Andy will outline his position. The conference only got 2.5 or 3 weeks, I think, before conference recess. So Andy will do maybe one announcement. We maybe see maybe one or two U-turns, small U-turns on some stuff that Starmer did that was unpopular, maybe. But tries to send a signal. But we'll get lots of talk about this very big speech that we'll hear from Andy Burnham at Labour conference, outlining the future of the Labour Party and the future of the country. And then we'll have a budget. And this, James, is where we get to see what does Andy Burnham actually choose to do? Because in this campaign, you and I both said it, I've heard Andy Burnham wants to bring back HS2 between Birmingham and Manchester, the most unpopular infrastructure project going because of the billions of wasted. So
Also,
when's that
with more
happening?
money, you need more money for that, right?
Need more money for that. We know that John Healey and Al Khan's literally resigned because Keir Starmer wasn't serious about defence. Now, we're led to believe there needs to be about 28 billion as a bare minimum, the MOD is claiming. Starmer found 13 billion. So 15 billion that Andy Burnham needs to magic up to make John Healey happy and be taken seriously on defence. Then there's welfare, where you think there would be some money
Well,
available, but Andy
I'll stop you
Burnham's.
on that. Just quickly, I mean, one thing I heard is one of the reasons John Healey decided to resign is because he thought that he was led to believe by Burnham's team that he was not going to stay. So that's a claim by some people that I've heard. But the other thing is, there's a rumor. This has been in the media that there's certain very senior defence chiefs that if they didn't get a significant uplift in spending, they could go. So Burnham could be faced with the choice in the next couple of months that either he sees, if not 15 billion, then much more than the 13 billion, or in his first 6 months in charge, he sees senior military officials who are widely respected by the public departing because he's not strong enough on defence.
And then you've got, like you say, James, welfare, where we've heard that his team are going to be creative in how they solve welfare. So no cut immediately, but sort of a reimagination of how we can get people back into work in 10, 20 years. But don't worry, trust me, my name's Andy Burnham. I'm dead normal, me. You do a much better impression than me, James.
I'm dead normal, me. I'm just I'm just going for a pint. I'm just wearing a t-shirt. I'm just totally dead normal. Not a very good Mancunian accent, but
Well, there you go.
encapsulates
And then,
Burnham.
but this is the reality, isn't it? And then obviously in all this time, there is going to be the pressure. Nigel Farage has come out today on his Substack, his second essay that he's written, which is saying he wants a general election now. I think the Tories have not said they're demanding one, but if one was called, they'll obviously be ready to fight it. And Burnham's team will come under a lot of pressure to say, well, if you have this big, new, bold vision for the country, if you have your own mandate, if you want to change the fiscals, which ultimately we all know you want to, then would it make sense to go to the country win that mandate? You're riding high off the win of the victory in Makerfield. You're very much the vibes candidate right now. You could catch Reform, Greens, Conservatives. Well, Greens and Reform on the hop. The Conservatives are still in the rebuilding phase. Lib Dems, no one seems to be listening to. This is a great opportunity to end Nigel Farage, end Zach Polanski, and bring us back to normal two-party politics. But you, Andy, would have your own working majority. And so there'll be that internal pressure to do that. Now, for Reform, I think they're also going to be up for this election because at the end of the day, they'll go, this is another establishment stitch up, another person just brought in by the uni party, to coin the phrase that's used in Reform circles. We've been through this chaos. We need something new. Andy Burnham is just the same old Starmer, bit in a t-shirt. And I think probably for Reform, an early election wouldn't be a bad thing, but there's going to be this huge pressure. And Andy Burnham's going to have a big Gordon Brown moment decision. Does he call an election? Because there will be a poll bounce. I think you've said, James, the poll bounce might only be initially at best a level with Reform in the national polls, but still, that could be the difference between holding on to a majority or even being largest party or not. And I think I'm intrigued, James, to see if you do you think the election is possible in this 6 months, or does Andy Burnham, you think, just get his ducks in a row, get his team hired, get his ministers in a check, and then we'll start seeing the serious reform agenda over the next 2 years that Andy Burnham has muted with social care, education, HS2, WASPy women, and whatever else he promised in that Makerfield by-election.
I mean, there's two things. I think there's what's the sensible thing to do? What he should he do? And then what's he likely to do? So I'm struck by a variety of people who are, on our side, let's say on the right, but speaking to people who are within the Labour spectrum, a very senior person in the Labour Party. Many people agree that it's not going to get better for Andy Burnham than the next 8 months. That will be his high point, and that things will get more difficult after that. It's also the case that and there's some indicative polling on this. So some of the pollsters have carried out polling where they put Andy Burnham's name next to Labour and they run it against Nigel Farage's Reform and Kevin Badenoch's Conservatives, etc. And they find that there's, I think it's something like 5-6 point bounce, which puts you about level with Reform. But I think there's a strong case for going early in that. That's as good as it's going to get for Labour. Things are going to get difficult again. And I think, much like the Conservatives found, you've now got a backbench. We hear that 200 MPs support Andy Burnham within the Labour Party. Well, that means 200 MPs don't support Andy Burnham. We're also now,
including Keir Starmer, I suspect, James.
well, we're now, it's a great point because we're already hearing this morning how some of the MPs, and he's got a few very loyal MPs, and the people around Keir Starmer are really angry with Burnham. They've kicked out this guy that won a 170 odd seat majority, the third best showing that Labour's ever had. Less than 2 years after being Prime Minister, Andy Burnham has kicked him out. Now, that's hardly going to endear you to people that are loyal to Keir Starmer. So he's going to have, and by the way, one of the reasons Keir Starmer is going is because he struggled to marshal his whole parliamentary party. They couldn't get benefit cuts. And that was early on when they had a lot of power. So I think it's going to be very difficult to manage the Labour Party. So for those reasons, I think he should go early. And like I said, I spoke to very senior people and people with the ear of Andy Burnham who think that. That is for sure. And I don't think he will, because you touched upon it. How many people go to the country knowing they're going to lose 100 seats? That's a risk. And I think in the risk reward scenario, the reward for Burnham is a small majority. That's his own, but it would be tough to manage because he's going to end up probably like Cameron in 2050. A very, very small majority, maybe single digits, and maybe a coalition. But the downside is he, less than 2 years or just 2.5 years after Labour win a landslide, he leads the party to defeat and Nigel Farage becomes Prime Minister. And the people against an early election will be saying, if you call an election and Nigel Farage becomes Prime Minister, that'll be the only thing you're remembered for. That would be, you were Premier for 6 months and then you handed the keys to the country. And if you're on the left, Farage is the bogeyman, right? And so that's the kind of counter view. And I think it's what's going to sway Burnham because politicians, they're not in that way often risk takers. And so I doubt he's going to end up calling one. But I do think it's his best chance of actually having a coherent government. And I suppose it depends. Do you want to spend a couple of nice years in number 10 going to Chequers for the weekend and having a few good foreign trips, but battling a Labour Party that doesn't want to deliver cuts, that you have to U-turn on prior promises, all the issues that Keir Starmer's dealt with? Or do you want to risk it all, but for the chance of having your own mandate and maybe getting some of the things that you came in politics to want done? I mean, if you were, I think we just came on as Nigel Farage was calling for an early election. Unsurprising, he's been pretty consistent on that. And I think Kemi has, but I wouldn't be surprised if she agrees with that. I think generally as the opposition, you always call for an election. You kind of look weak if you don't want one anyway. But if you were Burnham, would you call an early election?
I mean, I would, because I agree that it's not going to get any better than it is now, and that fundamentally Andy Burnham has said, if we believe the version of Andy Burnham from his time as the Mayor of London, sorry, Mayor of Greater Manchester, I'm sure he might aspire for the Mayor of London as well at some stage, who knows?
Maybe the mayor
But
of
it's that,
London will become leader at some point.
yeah, maybe. The Mayor of Greater Manchester, he talks soft left, right? He talked of essentially Milibandism with a mixture of a bit of
Well, he has
Starmerism.
Miliband staff around him, and he has Lou Hay kind of running his campaign up there. He's people keep saying, "What does he
Sorry,
stand
James,
for?" But he's surrounded by the
his
stuff
campaign
left.
manager his campaign manager is the person who was sacked from cabinet
Yeah,
for criminal behavior, I believe it was, or alleged criminal behavior. It was certainly around mobile phones and her previous employment
stolen
in
mobile
the
phones or something. Yeah,
stolen mobile phones. I mean, it's not a great look, but this is the person you'll be bringing back in the cabinet. Let's just say that, especially when you want to attack everyone else for not being purist and perfect. Nigel Farage might be sensing a certain amount of irony in the attacks on his own personal, donations, as it were, that he's received. Yeah, Louise Haig literally is going to be back in cabinet at some point.
Mm,
And Angela Rayner as well, who literally dodged tax. So let's be real about this. I agree with you. I think it's going to be. I would call it. I'd be advising him to call it. I'd be saying that if you get your own mandate, it'll help in some sense with the bond markets, because you have to, in terms of they now know that you've got a mandate for what it is you want to do. You can make sure the parliamentary party is fully on board. Yes, you are going to lose probably 100, maybe 150 MPs, but the reality is that the brand is so toxic, and if you don't deliver dramatic change in 2 years, which I find hard to believe, because I don't think we'll see any serious legislation that brings about radical change hit the statute books till at best November, December this year, which means you're talking Easter 2027 before it's probably passed into law. And that means, well, what? Then we're at the best 2 years away, at best 2 years away from a general election. Are people going to see and feel that change? I mean, he's talked about wanting to have social housing building program, the largest since the Second World War. Labour's nowhere near their own 1.5 million housing target.
mm,
We've got local government reorganisations that we've spoken about before. What's he going to do with that, for example? That's sat there on the desk. He's got the defence, as I keep saying, if the defence chiefs get what they want, he needs to find 15 billion welfare. Everyone knows the welfare bill is going to be bigger than what we bring in via income tax in this country. What's he seriously going to do apart from warm words about helping people get back to employment? We see that the NEU today, a poll of their own members say 72% of their own members say Labour's done a terrible job on schooling. Andy Burnham's talked about wanting to bring his M back, something I have supported as a principle, something I do like as an idea. But he wants to bring that in to schools across England. That is not an overnight job. That's a 1-2 year kind of program with money behind it in order to deliver it. And this is a time when schools are facing high energy bills, increased staffing wages, increased employers' national insurance, which are not being fully covered from Rachel Reeves. And then on top of all that, Andrew Neil's done some great tweets saying that actually the government currently is borrowing above the OBR's own
mm.
forecast and is set to carry on that way. So now he's got an even bigger debt interest payment bill than was currently anticipated by the last budget. I don't see things getting any better for him. And some of this is inherited. The war in Iran was not of Starmer's making, not of Burnham's making, just like COVID was not of Boris Johnson's making. So these are events out of their hands. But there is also decisions like employers' national insurance, where Andy Burnham said on the campaign trail he was uncomfortable with increasing that tax. So, okay, mate, congratulations, you're now the Prime Minister. What are you going to do? You're going
Mm.
to lower it or not? I just think
Well,
we've
but
heard
let me
so
ask you
much on the
this.
campaign trail.
Let me ask you this. So you were a Conservative MP for five. What did you go for? It's 4 to 5 years,
4.5 years, 4.5 years.
1.5. And you had three leaders. You obviously came in with Boris, but you saw two changes. So Liz obviously
Yeah.
came in, and we had a kind of couple of months, whatever it was, leadership election. So she had a little bit of time to plan. You know, we can obviously go into how that worked out, but she had that kind of, I think, if memory serves, there was a kind of good few weeks before the end of the contest when it was just assumed Liz was going to win, and she was spending a lot of time. Is it Dawney Wood? Is the I can't remember which the foreign secretary's retreat is. It's obviously not Chequers. Not Dawney Wood. That is that the Chancellor's. Anyway, where I can't the name forgives me. But the foreign secretary, as she was at the time, has a kind of country house where they can go, and they spent a lot. She was spending a lot of time with their advisors planning. Sunak, it came quickly, but maybe he had a bit of a plan for when he ran for leader himself. When you were sat there as a Tory MP, you had two new leaders come in. Liz Truss had a very clear platform. But how, and obviously she didn't last that long. I'm wondering what your reflections are on what it's like being an MP. How quickly do you feel things change? How and how do you feel as an MP if you try and be as neutral as possible? How obvious is the difference? And did a lot of what you were doing before get shelved? What can we expect based on your experience?
So look, my experience, I think, well, for me, was that we saw a rapid change in the ministerial teams, right, both of Truss and of Sunak.
And
So
personnel
suddenly
is a
there are
big
people.
thing.
The personnel's a big thing, and with that comes the problems, right? People who get jobs that someone like on my wing of the Conservative Party at the time didn't like. under Sunak, but there were people, I'm sure, on Sunak's wing of the Conservative Party who didn't like people like me coming into government under Liz. So you get animosity. Then there's other people who hoping to get jobs, but if you're being a pragmatist, and allegedly Burnham is trying to be a pragmatist, that means there'll be some of his people who are going to have to be sacrificed and not become a cabinet secretary of state. They're going to have to be a minister of state instead, which also means that with that they don't get the full status or the full, the full walk down Downing
The
Street every
car,
Tuesday to cabinet, the car, and all that
attending
stuff. So
cabinet.
there's all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of terms of like shoving the decks, and obviously these people, right? The parliamentary Labour Party's now been together for 2 years. So there'll be some people who will be going, Lou Haig, the one we was sacked from cabinet, Angela Rayner, the one who had to leave cabinet. There'll be others going, Wes Streeting survived. Why is Ed Miliband not being allowed to be chancellor? I thought he was one of us, Andy Burnham. Why is he backtracking? Why should Barbara Booth still in the Home Office? I thought Angela Rayner said that she was being cruel, or sort of words to those effects when it came to her reforms on immigration. Now, Angela Rayner's in the cabinet defending this and with collective responsibility. What's going on here? I thought all these people were standing up for us. It's just, and like that animosity internally just never heals, in my view. People just get into their factions. People feel overlooked or underappreciated. I know I was angry with Rishi when I got sacked. He had the decency to call me. I know I was upset and angry because I was a teacher and felt that I was in the brief that I knew, and I felt I had something to offer. And I felt that for me, selfishly, it was an opportunity to try and show people a side of me
But
that
what?
I
So
didn't do a very good job expressing myself. So there is that. So that animosity was there for quite a while.
mm.
Don't get me wrong. There was obviously I had my concerns with the people around
Could you
Rishi as
see
well as
that with
Rishi himself.
others? So, Healy's obviously resigned. But to your point, you're right. Personality is just a big thing that changes when you get a new leader, like in a big way,
Ads.
much bigger than a reshuffle. All this, a lot of the spads go. And like MPs,
You're going to get
they don't
as an
have jobs
MP,
to
by
go
the
to.
way. As an MP, you're going to suddenly have here's the new director of comms. So there's another new person you need to go and meet. Here's the new political secretary, chief of staff. These are all people that start having one-to-ones with you. You're trying to figure out what they're like, what their interests. Are they meeting me just to say they've met me, or are they meeting me to actually listen to me? So you're
Mm.
trying to figure. Everyone's trying to figure each other out at this stage. You've got a new chief whip and a new whip's office, right? Okay. Well, Andy Burnham said that whipping, he wants to do it differently. He thinks whipping shouldn't be as strict. Okay. Well, what does that mean? I can rebel as and when I want without consequence. I can need to abstain. Like it's just
Give us a contrast.
all this matters.
Give us a contrast. So, one scenario, Liz comes in, you became a minister. So there's a group of people who are either quite junior or don't have a job at all, and they're going to be kind of Burnham's people. He's going to, as you said, he'll keep some people for continuity to look like he's holding the party together. But there's going to be some Burnham people who are given new jobs or elevated. What's that like? And then the second part of it is, what was it like going on the back benches again? And I assume you're hanging around with people who are in a similar position, who had a senior position under whether it was Boris or Liz, and now know they've got until the next election where they're almost, because that's maybe one point is the prime minister comes in when you've got 5 years. There's always a kind of chance the whips, tell me if I'm wrong, can kind of dangle jobs in front of you, whoever you
Oh
are, and
yeah,
say,
yeah, yeah.
well, there's 5 years, a long time.
Give yourself, behave yourself, show your
Yeah.
loyalty.
But when you're this stage, there's kind of 2.5 years, there's a new prime minister, especially if you've been in office. My sense of speaking to people is they're like, well, I know I'm not getting another job now because I know Andy doesn't like me. I know there's only 2 years, blah, blah, blah. So what's that collection of people like?
It's a nightmare because the senior cabinet ministers, former cabinet ministers, and I say this from experience of knowing some, they basically start saying to the whips, "Yeah, I'm not coming in today. I don't care. I'm not bothering to vote." Or they say, or they just start already thinking about their career, so they start collecting the second, third jobs, whatever it is, and
Mm,
then there's news stories about the earnings of those second, third jobs, and people questioning how much time they're dedicating to Parliament, or they just openly are in tea rooms and just saying, yeah, everything's a bit rubbish, and they just share their opinions and their views, or they get to go on a bit like Kwasi Kwarteng did, right? He's suddenly on Good Morning Britain whilst he, as the former chancellor, and gets to essentially try and reinvent himself as like, this guy who's seeking public absolution from his time in that office. So there's others who then want to kind of set their record straight or say this is what I wanted to do, but I had to do this, and so some of the dirt comes out in the wash, and
mm.
all this stuff. And then you've got the others like me who, look, I was unique, right? I did 51 days. It was embarrassing. There's no way of saying it. It was embarrassing. I didn't get the chance to do anything of any real significance, despite having put a lot of hours in those 51 days to try and at least get my team within the department to a place where I was like, right, you all know the direction of travel. Now we need to deliver on these things. And so there was embarrassment, there was frustration, and then there was a sense of, just because by that stage we were on our third leader, there was also a sense of I'm still going to lose the election. So, the brand is so damaged. I'm just sort of sitting around here waiting to be cannon fodder come next election. Now, the PLP has drank the Kool-Aid exactly like I thought they would, and they believe that Makerfield is now literally the result that will determine the rest of the country, despite the fact that Andy Burnham won't be on the ballot paper on every seat. The fact that this was also the get Starmer out election for Labour voters as much as Reform voters, which is a unique set of circumstances. Also, whilst also Andy was struggling the hoovering up the progressive vote and the anti-reform vote, so he was struggling two horses, but both those horses won't be present come a general election. And everyone gets to portray what they think Andy Burnham will be like and what their hopes for Andy Burnham will be like. Well, we're about to find out what Andy Burnham is actually like, and the public will then get to decide, do they actually like what he actually does
Mm,
or doesn't do. And so I think this is for me. So, the PLP, I suspect at some stage will wake up and smell the coffee. I mean, there are a number of parliamentary by-elections that may happen. Some MPs are currently obviously under criminal investigation. If those by-elections happen, one of them is in a seat potentially where it'll be a straight Reform versus Tory fight. So Andy Burnham's first potential parliamentary by-election, Labour comes third.
mm.
How's that for rebuilding the Labour Party?
Yeah.
And they'll go, oh, well, it was a safe Tory seat before, and we're not surprised. But it's like, but you said you're the antidote to Reform. If Reform win it, you're not the antidote, then are
Mm.
you? If your vote's gone down, Reform's goes up. Andy Burnham's not the antidote as much as you thought
I
he
mean,
was.
also to your point, the things that dictate politics are often events. So I think, there's this discussion. Burnham's team, we're led to believe, it seems realistic, it seems believable, it seems from people close to him, they want till September to come up with a plan. And Starmer's team are understandably saying, no, mate, you caused all this fuss. You've got me out of my job. If you're not ready, that's your problem. Frankly, it's a disgrace, a scandal if you did all this and you didn't have a plan. So good luck to you, but we're not waiting around.
Bearing in
But
mind, James, by the way, he tried in Court and Denton earlier this year, so he's actually bought himself extra months by not being able to run them
yeah,
by-election to get ready.
he tried in Gordon and Dentist, so he's obviously been trying for several months. The thing is, to me, is when people said that, oh, he wants till September, I was like, well, you're just going to have a whole summer of the Times, the Guardian, all the major, titles, finding out things from people around Burnham that they're thinking about doing. Let's ditch the triple lock. Oh, it turns out, turning HS2 back on is going to cost 20 billion or whatever. And they're going to have to constantly firefight this. They'll come in probably about as popular as Keir Starmer. They blow their lead before he's even become Prime Minister. But to your point earlier, however the next couple of months looks, let's give him a break. Let's say he comes in and he does his whole "I'm just a dead ordinary northern man" routine. I'm just down here
Wear
for a
t-shirts.
pint. Yeah, he's at the red line in a black t-shirt having a pint because Andy's just dead normal. It's just like you and me. And that his dead normal routine works for 2 months. The rubber's got to hit the road a bit at conference because all eyes of the country. Oh, that's not true. No one watches conference, but all eyes of the political world are on conference because
Yeah, his speech will be. I think his speech will be right. People will tune in. I think that will
people
get
will
broader
listen to his
coverage than
speech.
most.
So that's the easier thing to do because you're in total control. You write it. He's got a couple of months, but then he's got the budget, and the budget. So where did he pick winners and losers? To your point, politically, he's going to pick some winners and losers when he brings the cabinet in. To your point, there's some people who think I'm going into an Andy Burnham cabinet, and they're not going to. There's some people who think they're going to deserve a job, but they're not going to. There's some people who think they're great ministers, and of course Andy Burnham's going to keep me, and they're going to be on the backbenches. So we've got that. Then in the budget, you really have to pick winners and losers. You got to raise money from somewhere, as you said. I think it was it last month we've got the numbers for the borrowing was 3-4 billion more than the OBR had projected. So the interest premium that's being charged on the UK economy is a lot higher than others. having a real impact on how much we're having to borrow. So all of the other problems. The thing he's got going for him is maybe Iran looks a bit okay, but how quickly that comes through probably is unclear. And so he has the budget. Then, of course, we get into early next year. He's got a set of local elections. To your point, well, according to Andy Burnham and his supporters, your party's going to do terribly, and suddenly everyone's going to go, "Oh, well, we don't want Nigel Farage anymore. We love dead normal Andy in his black t-shirt, and it's all going to be fine." I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, how do you see that playing out? Are you looking at the next elections as a reform person, thinking, "Oh no, this is going to be our worst step so far," or are you thinking, by then it's just going to be more of the same? We can go in with some confidence.
I think that I certainly think he's a much more formidable opponent, and he is better a communicator. So I don't take him lightly at all. I think he will be our toughest challenger. But I do think, to your point, by then he's had to make some decisions. But the big one being the budget, and I think that unless he really does something very dramatically different, it will look like continuity Starmer, but in a black t-shirt. And ultimately, for me, the public are crying out to see something different happen. And I think the expectation, personally, from my perspective, has been ramped up, and Andy Burnham's team have not tried to ramp that down. I think they've allowed the idea that he's going to be this great savior, the Messiah over the water, to be sort of pushed out as a worldview. I mean, I've got friends, James, who are shock horror not in the politics world and aren't as nerdy as you and I. They're all kind of like, let's see what. I think I sent you a message of it today. I think one of them said, let's see what Burnham does, but I'm not suspecting it to be great or a lot. And I think that's going to be his problem. So I think that come next May, where he's nearly had then probably a year in office if he's a coronation in July, I think that we will be able to take the fight to him in many of those places and say, what's changed? I think we will get to run the what's changed. Do you
Let
feel better off?
Let me give you something. So, as you were talking, I was thinking. I've just quickly looked at some stats. I can't find the exact one I want, but anyway. So, when you were talking, I was thinking what Burnham reminds me of is Rishi Sunak. When Rishi Sunak was Chancellor during the pandemic, we only ever saw Rishi Sunak this kind of compared to Boris. He was a young, youthful, bit more. This makes me sound like a dad, but a bit more hip. I'm a dad, so it's fine. But a bit more hip, a bit more trendy, a bit more with it. The comms around Rishi was generally slicker. They produced better videos, better graphics than was coming out of Downing Street. And I think the biggest part is generally Rishi Sunak appeared on TV and gave away billions of pounds to people. He said, if you don't want to work, we're going to pay you. If you're a business, we're going to give you a cheap free loan. Here's another 10 billion. I remember this famous story that knocks around Spads at one point, just to illustrate how much was going out from the government at that point, which I know is not exactly on this episode, but it's to do with Rishi. Once there was an announcement, it was something 4 billion coming from the Treasury, and someone said, "Oh, well, do we even need to press for that? It's only 4 billion." Now, what would Andy Burnham give to be able to make a £4 billion public spending announcement? He'd give his right teeth to do that. But that's where Rishi was. Rishi, this is not a criticism; it's a simple fact. During COVID, was dishing out. Now, when he becomes prime minister, I've got the data from YouGov from October 2022, and it runs to June 24. So his doing well doesn't change that much. It goes from 28 to 20. So actually, you'd think, oh, that's not that bad. Well, he's doing badly. Do you think he's doing a good job or bad job as Prime Minister? It goes from 28 and it ends on, can you guess what number?
Is it minus 28 when he comes in, or
So
is he
this
plus
is
28?
it's a plus number because it's the
Oh,
percentage
okay,
of
plus.
people who think he's
28.
doing badly.
He finishes on 50.
No, 72.
Oh,
So
right, okay.
he goes up by nearly 50% of people. So basically, a whole bunch of people who hadn't really made up their mind, a lot because the is he doing well tracks broadly within about 5-10 points. It not almost triples, and I think this is the problem that Burnham's going to have. Rishi came in, everyone projected what they wanted onto Rishi. And he was always, he could say the popular things and stay out of everything else. So Andy's dipped in and said, to your point on Nick's, "Well, I don't know if I like it." But he hasn't said what he'll do. He hasn't said if he'll get rid of it, and if he's going to get rid of it, where he's going to get the money from, right? He said, "Oh, I think WASPy women have a point." Then he quickly got people to brief that he wasn't necessarily going to do WASPy women. So he's in this habit of kind of giving people what they want. Oh, you want a spoonful of sugar? Here you go. It's totally fine. And Sunak did that, and people were like, "Oh, this guy's why." That was the Sunak sales pitch. You talked about it on this pod before. This guy's wildly more popular. Well, of course, when you become prime minister, you can't give people sugar all the time. You have to make sure they brush their teeth a bit. People don't like brushing their teeth. It's not a tortured analogy. And so Burnham's going to come in now, and he can't just say nice things. He's going to have to say yes or no, WASPy women. Yes or no to HS2. Where is money coming from on social care? Are you on the budget? Do you keep Nick's or get rid of it? Because to your point, that's his choice. Or if the Chancellor makes the choice, it's his Chancellor. He's appointing the Chancellor. And I just don't see how I don't see where this comes from. However good a communicator you are, if you put up taxes, people don't like you.
I think there's that great, and you highlighted it, James, a great Sam Coates piece where he's kind of explored Manchesterism. And what's good about it is Sam's worked very hard to show a balanced piece, to show the positives. And there are people who, and I must say, the public overwhelmingly like Andy Burnham. They feel that he's one of them. But when you look at the actual story of Manchesterism, if you live in Manchester city centre, if you're a young professional, or indeed maybe a young exec, and you want to buy a nice luxury style apartment, absolutely, Manchester's beaming for you. If you live in Stockport, Makerfield, all these other places, Manchester is yet to even wash up onto your front door. In fact, if anything, I think one of the female guests that's spoken to said that child poverty has actually increased to around 37% across Greater Manchester area. So the reality is that, and Manchesterism, we also learned, was started and already underway before Andy Burnham even becomes the mayor. There's the former mayor of Manchester City Council for over 20 years, who I think probably deserves a lot of credit for what's been going on in terms of within the city centre predominantly at this moment in time. Now, what I will say is the people interviewed who clearly like Andy Burnham, as in the politicians and people who work with him, they clearly kind of say Andy's a very good communicator. He's an excellent convener. Now, this gave me the signs of Boris. Great communicator, great at getting people in the room. What clearly happened in Manchester was he was able to have a small team around him who I think were very good at therefore then driving the
But, but,
Burnham vision
but
and agenda.
he inherited it.
He inherited it.
The council leader
He's
is
not
it Richard? Is it Lees? Richard Lees, I think. He was
John Lees or something like that.
John
Yeah, I
Lees.
can't remember.
He was a
I
council leader.
apologise.
Yeah, he's a council leader up in Manchester for a good few decades. By all accounts, he has a very, very good track record. And the film is interesting because it portrays to me, and as you said, I
He
think
is Richard Lees, by the way, James, just so we
Richard
know.
Lees,
Richard Lees. Sir
and it,
Richard Lees. I think he got it at the Sir.
and it portrays basically Burnham inheriting a Manchester that's already on the turn. So they kind of start the piece with the Manchester bombings, which, the older among us will remember. I remember them from my childhood, the IRA bombings in Manchester. And it starts with the rebuild of Manchester, which is kind of around the 90s and early noughties. So before Burnham arrives, there's this beginning of an upturn in the Manchester economy and the development that's happened there. He inherits a lot of that. There's also a point when one of the guys who doesn't seem anti-Burnham, but does point to the buses and says, Do you realise these buses are privatised? They're run by a private company in the same way as many other buses. These are not run by the city of Manchester. They're a franchise. And so to me, there's a lot of like at this point, Burnham is good at selling himself to different people. He's kind of worked with these guys before, then he's taken a load of credit, particularly for this B network, a privatized bus network, which I don't think people who rave about it always fully understand. He's got Richard Lees there, who's maybe something akin to a kind of Eddie Lister figure that Boris had to kind of run
100%.
things. Knows
100%.
how knows how to run a government office. Knows how to get a civil service to function and to deliver. And so there's those people around him. And then what he's managed to do is, add the cherry on top. And that's not to do down. A big part of being a successful politician is no doubt communication. And it's something that Starmer has failed miserably at, and he's never been good at. And Burnham has that going for him. But let's be honest, he's not inheriting a great situation. No matter how many, Labour can't just talk about Brexit clubs, breakfast clubs, slip of the tongue, given it's the anniversary tomorrow. Breakfast clubs, given, for the next 2 years, right? That's not going to get them through. They talk about the growth of the economy. It's not really been delivered. They haven't been able to get welfare cuts, which they wanted to. They don't have money for defence. That he's not inheriting a fundamentally good
Unemployment's on the
situation.
rise.
And then who is gonna be this Richard Lees guy? Because that's the other thing. What we saw with Boris is with Eddie Lister, it worked. With Dominic Cummings, for a time when he had a plan on Brexit, it worked. And Boris deserves credit because he gave Dom the cover to deliver his plan for Brexit. But when there was nobody listed, when there was no Dom, when there wasn't that single strong figure with himself a clear idea, what we saw is a real lack of coherence, eye to detail, and the vision and the comms wasn't enough with Boris. And that, I think you can see that potentially happening to Burnham is, I think you're right, the comms can get him. I think the comms can get him through summer. I can imagine getting to the end of summer and people turning to me and you and saying, you see, Burnham's he's got a 5-6 point bounce. He's still doing quite well. We've got conference going well. He'll give a speech. Maybe he'll ditch notes, but he'll look super normal in his black t-shirt.
By
And
the way,
everyone will say,
James, remember, to back you up there, remember when we got told how great Keir Starmer's conference speech was? It was
yeah,
game-changing conference speech. And lo and behold, what was it? 8 months later,
yeah.
he's...
And we'll get
So, yes,
told
we'll
all
get
this.
told.
And then he'll have a budget. And then he has to make some choices. And then we'll start to come back round to what's happened to defence spending. And then there'll be the latest figures that the welfare bill's gone up. Then there'll be the debt payments, all this kind of stuff that needs detailed grip and a plan. And I think ultimately, maybe he can eke out a honeymoon period for a bit longer than people expect. That's what I think is possible with the com side. But delivery eventually, it's going to get to you. And I don't know. That's where I don't see what his choices are. I mean, the question I've got for you, because you touched on it earlier, is if you were Burnham or you around Burnham, or frankly anyone coming in now, what are the couple of unpopular things you would quickly ditch that are relatively painless? And what are a couple of popular things that don't cost money could Burnham do pre-budget to keep his role going?
Probably completely U-turn on the family farm tax. I don't think that is financially, it's not a massive amount of money.
700
And
million, is it, I think.
yeah, so like they've done a bit already, but I just completely reverse it.
Yes.
I would completely reverse winter fuel. I think there's only like 500 million left again.
But
They've
you,
U-turned a
you're
bit
you're
already.
already up to about £1 billion.
It's already a billion quid, but this is what I'm saying. But I'd two things where I'd be like, those things are now off the table. I was always against them. He can say this. I was always against them. I never voted for any of this stuff.
Yeah.
I wasn't in Parliament when this happened. I'm making it clear now. We should never have put farmers and we should never put our pensioners in this position. And I told you I'm changing the party. So here's the change. So first of all, Chancellor Streeting, Chancellor Miliband, Chancellor Mahmood, whoever it is, find me £1 billion. We're doing that straight out the gate. Those are two headline things. The Starmer era, we're cleansing ourselves of Starmerism.
So for
I
but so it does cost money, but in government terms, for relatively small amount of money, you think he could do, finding £1 billion is not probably impossible. I
no,
think because of the market's nervousness around Burnham, I think he would need to signal where that's going to come from quite strongly before he makes the announcement. But I agree with you; it's probably not impossible. And you think that could give him a good, clear line of, the Starmer era is over. I'm different. That's your
yeah, I
point.
think so.
Yeah.
I think so. That's what I would. I think, and then lean into the NHS waiting list figures and the immigration figures, which look, currently the immigration figures and small boat crossings are down on last year, reasonably
Be
significantly.
interesting to
Obviously,
see what they're like after a week of this weather, but yeah.
Well, yeah, as I say, then, so let's see. But like, there is a pattern that's emerging there that Labour might be able to point to in the short term.
Yeah.
So I think that you can package up some stuff that was happening already, like the NHS waiting list, alongside cleansing the slate of two. I mean, reading the pollsters and those who do focus groups, your Scarlett Maguires and Neutrials, who I read a lot of, they say time and again winter fuel payments comes up, even now comes up, even though the government's performed majority U-turn, not full U-turn, majority, it still comes
Mm.
up on things. And the family farm tax, I think, is look. I'm not saying you're going to suddenly win over the rural vote, but for a small amount of money, it's a Starmer thing that was very high profile. I think there's a large amount of people who know about it. And at a time when we're talking about needing to feed the nation and cost of food on the shelves, I think there's a story you can angle in that this will
I guess as
encourage
well,
farming and
for those people that want to believe that things are changing, this gives them something to believe. Does that make sense?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Those are the two obvious things I can think of where it's reasonably low value in terms of cost. I maybe, but again, this would be money, is maybe he does something on national insurance for employers, but maybe he does it for young people to tackle youth unemployment. Maybe he does say
Yeah.
there's going to be a honeymoon period for a couple of years for under 25s
Yeah.
just to try and help, but that would have to be costed. So then, but he can then say, look, I've tried to find a middle. I'm a pragmatist because I wear a t-shirt, so I'm normal and I know what it's like to
One thing
have to
I
work hard.
think you should do, and I think this is easier for me and you to say than someone in the Labour Party, because I think it's quite popular in the Labour Party, is one thing I think he should do is kill the new assisted dying PMB.
Oh yeah,
This
yeah,
is
get
just
that
going to
off
be
the table straight away.
another nightmare for him.
By the
Um,
way, we had a lovely piece written over the weekend about his Catholicism, about how he's a the first Catholic prime minister. So
yeah.
and he's and allegedly he's
But,
against it. I agree with you. This
but
assisted
I wouldn't
dying
put it
bill can
down to
get out
that.
of hand quickly.
If
Can
I
get
was
out of hand
him,
quickly.
the way I would sell it is I would say, something that Keir was committed to, I'd hang it around Keir. If it was something Keir was committed to, it's rightly had parliamentary time. I understand lots of people are disappointed that it didn't make it through, but we've got 2 years left, and I really need to pick and choose where I can make a difference. And it's not that it can't be revisited in the future, but I think given it's already had a significant parliamentary time, I think you basically say that, which is the truth. What you're saying is a really polite way of you had your chance, you couldn't get it to work. I've got sympathy with you, but I've got 2 years because it's one of the things, you know, someone kept making the point. I think George Osborne said this on his podcast or something else he was on. That when David Cameron and George Osborne went in 2010, they had a focus, and it didn't. If it didn't match what they were trying to do, if it didn't cut the deficit, and it didn't deliver on their economic plan, or it could anyway damage it, then it was scrapped. And that is how Burnham needs to think. Burnham needs to come up with whatever plan he's got and look at things and say, even if he does, I don't know if he does, but if he has sympathy with assisted dying, he should say, I'd love to do this, Vice Prime Minister. Of course I would, but I've got 2 years, and it doesn't deliver me, growth, or probably in his view as well, it doesn't help, spread economic fairness or whatever,
Social justice.
yeah,
Yeah.
justice around, and therefore it's got to go.
The Makerfield test, James. Remember, we've now got the Makerfield test. It's got to pass the Makerfield test.
What does this
The
mean
Makerfield
exactly?
test. I think it's his way of saying leveling up.
Okay.
But the Makerfield test, it's got to help people like in places like Makerfield. It can't just help people in places like Westminster.
Okay. I mean, it sounds like political gibberish to me. I don't know what it.
What I love, James, is the pause there of going. I've heard. I can see on your face. I've heard all of this before from countless politicians across the political divide. One day maybe someone will prove me wrong, but I
What
can
was
see the
the?
skepticism on your face.
I think I'm way too cynical now. So, what was the 19 one that was the Workingham man or something? What was that?
Oh, Workington, the Workington
The
man, or something. Yeah,
Workington man.
it was where yeah, Tory MP won the seat. Yeah, we had it was the Ford under Blair, wasn't it? The Ford man or something like that. It was the Ford
No, we had the Mondeo man. And
Mondeo man.
I
That's it.
I
Sorry,
grew
Mondeo man.
I grew up partly in Selsdon near Croydon, and we had this Selsdon man, which was it Heath or even Thatcher? Anyway, that was a good 40 years ago because there's a golf golf course in Sales, and I think there was a Tory conference there, and that's where the salesman man, Mandela man. I mean, the thing that makes me laugh about them is not that there's not something real in having a test case for voters and profiling and understanding what the public want. And I think politicians should be more react. I don't think it's populist to address issues that affect big swathes of the population. I don't think that is populist. I think it's populist to keep chasing different things, depending on what they are, without a clear ideological vision. But I think if you funnel through your ideological vision to deal with the problems that people face, that's a good thing. But the thing that makes me laugh is people will come up with these now. Basically, they're for press. They're not really real, in my view, and they'll sell them to the press, and then the press treat them as if they're some kind of holy grail genius idea. And then the moment that person's gone, whether it's an advisor like Morgan McSweeney or Dom, or the moment the prime minister's gone, like Boris with levelling up, or I don't even know what Keir Starmer stood for. He didn't, I don't think, and that's probably part of the problem. But the moment they're gone, it's just kind of ditched and then probably made a joke out of every now and again. But we're gonna hear people seriously talking about the Makerfield test, which is something that I bet you they never use in number 10. I bet you no one says, "Oh, does that policy pass the Makerfield test?" I bet you. But they'll brief the papers and they'll write it because it's good copy and because they're too lazy to work out what's actually going on.
That was the cynic of the lobby, James. The lobby have been very cynical. They really grilled Andy Burnham, I felt, during that by-election. They're really grilling him
I mean, there are.
now. I feel,
I think there are some good. Sam's film,
yeah, of
Sam
course.
Coates' film was really good. I thought balanced, but
Steve Swinford.
he'd obviously gone up there and spoken to Jim O'Neill, who's a widely respected figure, this Lee's guy, and then members of the public. I think Steve Swinford's done a sterling job of covering what Burnham might look like over the past few days, both in the paper and on Times Radio. And I think some of the broadcasters, like Laura Kuenssberg, have been really good on the interviews, impressing some of these
Yeah.
politicians, and
Alex Wickham as well. I've enjoyed Alex Wickham and
Wicky's done
Bloomberg. I've
some
been
good pieces
enjoying.
in Bloomberg. But just
By the
in
way, James,
general,
sorry, just to keep you updated, because this has made me laugh. I just popped off my screen. I had to mute it quickly, get rid of it quickly. So there's a helicopter following the Avanti West Coast train line from to follow Andy Burnham. The joke is this is a bad test for Avanti. As someone who gets the Avanti West Coast main line, I can tell you there's normally delays. We are now officially told that it's 21 minutes delay. So Andy Burnham is eligible for delay and repay
there you
on
go.
Avanti West Coast. So he can get his claim in to get his delay and repay. And I would suggest it's probably not the best comms day for Avanti West Coast that everyone's talking about a delayed train. But the pressure that driver must be under must be extraordinary today to make
So
sure that
the
train.
bad news, Randy, is going to be late. The good news is he might get £25 from Network Rail or something.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Or
So
right about
I hope
I don't know who pay. Does the network providers?
I didn't provide it, but either way, make sure as long as he's got his ticket, I got delay and repay. I'll happily show him. Make sure he gets his claim in.
And
Make sure he.
the question is, like, let's have a quick look. Uh, what what I'm thinking is, what can he buy with his delay repay? So I think
So after 15 minutes,
he can get if he gets 20 quid, he can get a nice black T-shirt from Uniqlo.
there we go. Or M&S. Maybe M&S has got like a
Maybe
sale on. Maybe M&S has got.
it's just dead normal. Uniqlo's a bit fancy for our Andy. It's just dead normal down to M&S, probably as the George, which is where you get a lot of your clothes from.
And then and you know what? He'll go as a George, and then he'll buy a couple of cans to have whilst he's walking to
Having a pint.
Parliament in his new T-shirt. In his new T-shirt.
Just dead normal,
Um,
like.
It's just, I should just say, James, as well, we've now also had our first quote from Kemi Badenoch
Yeah.
on the general election now. Her answer is, if Andy Burnham does not have the answers on national security, therefore she does not fund if she does not fund the, if Andy Burnham doesn't fund the defence spending review, then a general election must be called. So there's a caveat for Kemi.
Okay. I think I guess that's just to get an attack in on the defence stuff.
I assume so as well, but I'm just giving that's the latest line I've
Well,
seen
there we
that. But
go. So we've moved from commentators to live news.
Andy's got a helicopter following Avanti West Coast train as we speak. Avanti's having a PR nightmare because they're 21 minutes delayed. but Andy Burnham will get 20 quid back, where he can go buy a T-shirt from Asda George maybe, and get himself a couple of cans on the way because our Andy is dead normal,
It's just dead
dead normal.
normal. Well, we're off to have ourselves a non-alcoholic dead normal pint,
Exactly,
and
in a lovely basking sun.
and we'll see where we are this time next week. Who knows at this stage? It's anyone's guess. But we might be both wearing black t-shirts by then because me and Gullis, we're just dead normal, aren't we, Jonathan?
It's dead normal, and obviously it's the style now. And
Let's get in there.
black t-shirts and start singing Oasis. That's that. If we pass those tests, we're eligible in Andy Burnham's Britain.
Well,
We can pass the test.
well, off we go to be dead normal. As usual, thank you so much for listening. We are available on Spotify podcasts, Apple Podcasts, other places where you can get your podcasts, but definitely those two. You can watch us on a YouTube channel if you're listening to us, or on Substack. Please subscribe, like, share, follow. As usual, thanks so much for joining us for me, James Starkey.
And me, John the Gullis.
Goodbye.